Hey, my name is Tom Sharp, and I'm doing my video report on my chosen educational philosopher, John Calvin. Now, typically, Calvin is remembered for his contributions to theology. However, this is not why I've chosen him for my study. Instead, I would like to focus on his profound influence upon the idea of universal education. Calvin's background can be framed around the Protestant Reformation. He was born in France and received his education at the University of Paris in the 1520s, not long after the Reformation began with the nailing of the 95 Thesis on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany by Martin Luther. Now, Calvin was influenced by Reformation thought and would flee France due to persecution. He would end up stopping in Geneva, Switzerland, and would begin a long ministry there, where he would become a leading and influential Protestant leader himself. Now, pictured here in the background is St. Pierre Cathedral in Geneva, where Calvin himself preached for many years. Universal education itself was supported by many Protestant leaders like Luther and Calvin as well, mostly due to a belief in what is known as the priesthood of all believers. Calvin and his contemporaries believed that it was wrong for the clergy to be educated while their common parishioners remained largely illiterate. They believed that many of the abuses of the church during the Reformation could have been identified and possibly avoided had people been able to read the Bible for themselves. That's a big reason for Calvin's strong belief that God has a special calling for every believer, thus giving them a need for spiritual education themselves so they can live out their unique calling in the station in which God has placed them. Another idea, total depravity, which is the idea that everyone is born sinful due to their inheritance of Adam's original sin, is another aspect of Calvin's theological beliefs that influenced his view that education should be made available for all. Calvin believed that people could only overcome the state of total depravity through God's grace, which could be revealed to them through Christian education. Now, Calvin put many of these thoughts into practice during his ministry in Geneva. And we can see this in several places. One is his writing of his magnum opus, the Institutes of the Christian Religion, which he wrote in Latin for a more educated audience, but for a lesser educated audience, Calvin wrote in his native French in the vernacular the Geneva Catechism, which was an attempt to provide an instructional tool for the education of children based on his theological views. The repetitive question and answer style of this particular catechism would be the original model for later Calvinist catechisms. Calvin would also further put his views into education into practice by founding the Academy of Geneva, which would not only train and educate pastors for ministry, but would provide higher education to individuals not seeking to join the clergy as well. As previously stated, Calvin would have a profound influence upon many later Reformed confessions and catechisms, such as the Heidelberg Catechism, the Westminster Catechism, and the 1689 Baptist Catechism, otherwise known as Keach's Catechism. With persecution coming from the Church of England, largely Calvinist Puritan groups would found colonies in New England and would seek to provide education that was not only influenced by Calvin's theology, but his belief in universal education as well. This can be seen in the creation of the New England Primer as the premier textbook of colonial America and the passing of the old Duluth-Satan Act, which was the first compulsory education law in America. Unfortunately, the religious motivation of universal education would diminish over time, but the goal of providing education for everyone in American society would persevere. And we can see that in the American Common School movement led by Horace Mann. And this is even though Horace Mann himself was a Unitarian, He grew up in a Calvinist household, and like many New Englanders of his day, he was greatly influenced by it. So as you can see, Calvin had a great impact on the creation of common education. Thanks.